Alright, it's a great day. Welcome to this week's class. It's still philosophy, language, and communication. And I think the last time we stopped at let me check some of the qualities of communication, where I spoke about the value of clarity, of truthfulness, of logicality, of charity, of tolerance. I think that was where we stopped. So today we'll look at philosophy, language, and human knowledge. Philosophy, language, and human knowledge. Let me not take it for granted that you know what epistemology. You should know. Year 2, I think you should know. But of course, you know that epistemology deals with the theory, nature, scope of knowledge. And when you claim to know something, you must at least believe what you know. And for you to believe what you know, you must have a justifiable basis of believing. And that justification must give you an attestation that that belief is true. I don't know if you are getting my point. Sorry. Now, what I mean is, traditionally, before, I will not go through the tenets of epistemology and everything. You do that when you do epistemology or when you do introduction to epistemology. I'll just give a rough introduction into what knowledge used to be. Now, when we say knowledge, one of the attributes of knowledge is that knowledge is universal, knowledge is certain, knowledge is unchanging, knowledge is eternal. For instance, when I say that I know that 2 plus 2 is 4, tomorrow I can't claim to say 2 plus 2 is 5. If tomorrow 2 plus 2 equals to 5, that means what I claimed to know yesterday was not actually knowledge, it was mere opinion. For instance, at a point in the universe, it was believed that the earth was or is flat. Are you getting my point? But now we believe that the earth is spherical. Now, those that claim that the earth was flat then, do they actually know? So that is the attribute of knowledge. It doesn't change. It is eternal. So those are the attributes of knowledge. So when you claim to know, you must have justifiable basis of knowing. One, that knowing must also be true, and you must believe it. You can't claim to know something you don't believe. So you must believe it that what it is true. So traditionally before, knowledge used to be what? Justified true belief. Justified true belief. It used to be the general definition or conceptualization of knowledge from the Platonic period down to a period around the 1962-1963 when Edmund Gettiard came on board to debunk the entire knowledge as justified true belief. Why? Because there are periods whereby you can have a guesswork. You do not know it, but your guess is correct. Are you getting the point? Someone might ask you that, okay, let's say Nigeria played with South Africa last year and the score was 1-0. Nigeria won 1-0. This year, Nigeria played with South Africa and the score was the same thing, 1-0. And you were just passing and someone said, what is the score between Nigeria and South Africa? And say 1-0. You are right. You are correct, but do you know? can you claim to know? So in knowledge, language is very important, because when you claim to know, you need language to express what you know. Language is what? Important in knowledge. Even your knowledge, you understood in a particular language. I don't know if you get the point. When, as I'm talking to you, as I'm speaking to you, I'm trying to communicate an idea. Are you getting my point? And the idea is that you may not know something and still you might guess right. That is the idea. But what am I using to communicate that idea? I am using what? The tool of what? Language. Language is not what I'm trying to communicate to you. But I'm only using language as a means to communicate that particular idea to you. I hope you get that point. So, and you also, that you are listening to me, you are getting that particular idea through what? Language. So that shows what? The importance of language and knowledge. Are you getting it? So since the period whereby the traditional definition of knowledge as justified through belief has been debunked, knowledge has been conceptualized differently using what? Language. Now, what is the function of language in knowledge acquisition? Now I'll read, then I will explain. Knowledge requires language for effective transmission. Note that. Knowledge requires language for effective transmission. This is because a piece of knowledge is useless unless it is transferred to others. A piece of knowledge, I claim to know and I can't pass my knowledge, then it's useless. You know, that was one of the problems of the skeptics. Most importantly, Georgians. They said nothing exists. If it exists, it can't be known. If it can be known, it can be communicated. That is the problem of language. Are you getting my point? In this sense, language, according to Rita Conner, confers some kind of cognitive advantage on human beings over other species. To make this statement requires that we understand the intimate connection between language and knowledge. Knowledge and its growth are motivated by language. Just as we have seen, language becomes significant because it conveys knowledge and concept. Language is the vehicle through which you convey your knowledge and what? Concept. First, language and knowledge enables humans to properly understand and classify nature for the purpose of controlling it. Through language, you are able to have knowledge, then you are able to have classification, you are able to develop concepts and give classifications to things. So when they say animal kingdom, you know that okay, it is a world of animals. That is a concept. Animal kingdom is a concept. How were you able to come about it? Language. Are you getting the point? The second advantage follows from the first. Both enlarge the range of human possibility through understanding of nature. It enlarges the scope of what? Human possibility. For instance, the process of abstraction allows us to take phenomenon out of their immediate context and apply it to other contexts. To abstract, we take the common characteristics of several phenomena. Thirdly, language and knowledge provide a better means of organizing human experience. You know, some things, you know, at the inception of this class, I asked you that there are periods whereby you say you are short of words. Like, you are short of the right language to use to describe your experience. So language helps you to what? Organize your experience and helps you to what? Arrange your experience. So when you say you are short of words, it doesn't mean you are short of ideas or you are short of what to say, but you are just short of the right language, the right means of communication, of expressing that particular what? Experience. So language helps what? To organize our experience. Language also facilitates information storage and retrieval. Through language, you are able to what? Store information. I want to believe that communication to you, which I have also explained, does not only require verbal. We have written communication, we have signs as also means of what? Communication. These are very crucial in the growth and relevance of language. Knowledge is a function of language capacity to divide reality into meaningful segments that makes understanding possible. Effective dissemination of knowledge is therefore only possible when effective communication takes place. So, knowledge, language goes together. It helps you to arrange your thoughts, organize your experience, gives meaning to your word, and at the same time it helps you to conceptualize terms. It helps you to conceptualize. So, and it also helps you to store information. So without proper communication using language, then knowledge will be useless. You can't have knowledge without language, because you understood through language and you communicate through language. I hope you understand that clearly. And let me move to philosophy, concept, and human language. Philosophy, concept, and human language. I'm coming. Okay. So, when we say philosophy, concept, and human language, of course, you know that philosophy does not have any sort of universal definition, and we just say that language helps in formulation of what? Concept. So, one thing that a philosopher does using language is giving meaning to what? Concept. You give meaning what? To concept. That is what a philosopher does. So the first duty of a philosopher using language is what? The analysis of concept. Language provides two immediate functions for philosopher. The first function is that philosopher employ language for clarification purpose. A philosopher employ language for what? Clarification purpose. The second one, a philosopher employs language for interpretation of language itself. To interpret language itself, a philosopher employs language to interpret language. That is what we call, you clarify what? Concepts. So, the meaning of democracy, you employ language to what? Interpret that very language. Democracy is a concept passed through, or that a concept that was brought about using a language. Demo and kratia, gotten from two Greek words, a language. So a philosopher use language to interpret that language itself. A philosopher uses language to express meaning. That's the third one. One, a philosopher employs language what? For clarification. Two, to interpret. A philosopher employs language to interpret language itself. Three, to express meaning. to express what? Meaning. 4. A philosopher takes language itself as a subject matter. You take language itself as a subject matter to analyze language. I don't know if you get my point. So now, if every philosopher must have mastery of language. Every philosopher must have proper mastery of language. Now, listen to the quote of A.J. Ayer. A.J. Ayer said, and I quote, he said, a philosopher who has no mastery of language would be as helpless as a mathematician who could not handle numerics. A philosopher who has no mastery of language will be as helpless as a mathematician who could not handle numerics. So, the function of a philosopher is to what? Analyze, clarify, give meaning to things. Now, what is concept? Or what are concepts? Now, concept can be defined as a broad abstract idea or a guiding general principle. For instance, one that determines how a person or a culture behaves or how nature, reality, or events are perceived. Concept could be considered as a cognitive unit of meaning. I'm coming. So concepts are like ideas. They could be abstract and they could be concrete. For instance, democracy is a concept. Us is a concept. We could merge two concepts together like John Locke postulated. And you see, this concept need to be what? Analyzed. And how do you analyze this concept? You use what? Language in analyzing what? This concept, these ideas. How do you bring forth this concept? You use language in bringing forth what? These concepts. Because every of those ideas cannot be bettered or cannot come into being without expressing it using what? Language. So a philosopher deals with the clarification of concept, the analysis of concept, the interpretation of concept, and giving meaning to concept. So concepts are just what? Ideas. They are abstract ideas and they are concrete ideas that needed what? To be what? Explained. Now, let me quickly move to conceptual scheme. Then I will just explain. Okay. So, yeah. Sorry. I'm trying to make sure I don't go out of context. Now, you see, this concept, we use them sometimes to group things, sometimes to explain things, and sometimes to express an ideology. For instance, like I made mention of earlier, I said the animal what? Kingdom is a concept to group a place where we can find various animals living. For instance, zoo is a concept where we find animals. And so well also in our day-to-day life, we have different concepts that we use. We have different concepts that we adopt. We have different concepts that governs our life. When we say this concept, they are our ideologies, our belief system that has been translated to become language. And within this concept are what we call, we pattern our lives, our actions, our duties, and what we do. So when we say there is a conceptual framework in which you are working with now, the conceptual framework is there is a concept in which things you want to do revolves around it. Like when you are, let me explain it this way. When you are building, you are constructing a building. You know, while constructing that building, you always see that they will do like something like a frame for the window and the doors. You discover that they do like a frame there, that even while they are still building, they might not have fixed the window or the door, but the frame will just be there. Now, by the time they want to make the door or the window, they will measure the frame and make sure that the door or the window is able to fit into that frame. Are you getting it? The door or the window is able to fit into what? The established frame. That is like a framework ready. So everything you are doing is fitting into it. So when we say a conceptual scheme or a conceptual framework, is a particular ideology that you believe in, that every other thing revolves around it. For instance, some people's conceptual framework is Christian Bible. Some is the Quran. Are you getting it? So whatever you do in life, you base it, your judgment is always based on what that book says or what that book prescribed for you. So it serves as a frame in which every other thing tries what? To fit in. Are you getting my point? So that is conceptual framework. So like Immanuel Kant will argue that we have different conceptual what? Framework and conceptual what? Scheme. So even as individual, we have different concepts, different framework, different ideology that we subscribe to, and it affects how we interact and how we relate. These concepts, these frameworks are relative at times. They are relative. For instance, in ancient thief culture of Benue, it is believed, I heard it, I have not been to Benue State, but I heard that, so I could be corrected, that if you have a visitor as a man, you give your wife to the visitor to sleep with overnight as a way of welcoming the visitor. You know, in another culture, they will call it adultery, they will see it as evil, they will see it as abomination. But there, they see it as nothing that is bad. Why? Because it is their framework, it is their concept. And now, how does language come into place? Is this your conceptual framework or your concept determines the language you use. It determines what? The language you use. Do you know, if you do not believe that abortion is wrong, there is a way you define abortion that people will not see it as bad. Now let me give you an example. For instance, I could say abortion is the killing of a baby by a mother. Someone who believes that abortion is bad has defined it that way, and you see abortion to be terrible. But I could easily say that abortion is the removal of unwanted fetus from the body of the host. You look at that definition, it looks so mild and simple. It doesn't paint abortion to be something that is bad. So now, that is conceptual framework. Your concept, your ideology determines the language you will use. So conceptual framework influences language so much, influences our mode of communication, and it influences our thought pattern. And it is relative. So for you to understand a people's language properly, you need to first understand their conceptual framework. If I want to understand a language, I will not be able to get proper grasp of that language until I start getting to understand their conceptual framework that generates that language. Language most times is being generated by what? An idea, a conceptual framework. So let me just stop here so that it won't be too long. If you have any question, we will meet in class next week. Do well to ask me. So take care of yourself and have a wonderful weekend.